Hello everybody and welcome to the Human Echoes Rundown for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Director James Gunn's follow-up to his immensely popular foray into Marvel's weird world of sci-fi. And I'm just gonna let y'all know right off the bat that I'm in the minority of people talking about this movie because I think this film is better than the first one. And I like the first one quite a bit. And I've been a little bit leery of Marvel lately. Not that I've been disliking any of their movies, but I've been coming out of them feeling just a little bit meh. I felt a little bit meh about Doctor Strange. I really liked Civil War, but there's been some movies recently where I was like, that was good. You know, but they've been doing this kind of same thing over and over again. Am I going to like it? And I read some of the advanced buzz. People were saying, oh, it's not as good. Didn't do it as well. Respect those people's opinions, but for me, this is like top 5 Marvel now. I got out of this movie, and I laughed, and I cried many times, like, at the same time. The storytelling here, for me, was just impeccable and beautiful and heartwarming and funny, and it took what I liked about Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and pushed it to the next level. It said, we have these relationships in place. We've set up this group of people. We know that they know each other now. We know that they're sort of all together, and now we're going to explore deeper what their dynamics are and what makes them who they are, and, you know, push the conflict between them beyond just, I don't like you either, and like really dig into what their issues are. And that was amazing. And everything in this movie is in the service of these character moments, right? This is a movie with a lot of action, but the way the action is portrayed here, it's like James Gunn is looking at it and you saying, okay, it's not really important where their shields are at or how many times they've been hit or who's where in the frame. Like, a lot of times in this movie, action will be taking place in the background. The opening credits, right, are this giant, you've seen in the trailer, the giant fight with the space squid. And you think, well, that's going to be a great action scene. And it is to a point, but the way they frame that, most of the scene is actually Baby Drax dancing around to some music while the fight goes on out of focus in the background. And I don't know about y'all, but you drop a Bollywood-style dance sequence at the very beginning of your Marvel film, and yes, I am on board, especially if Baby Groot is the one doing the dancing. Baby Groot, by the way, excellent in this movie. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. He's just cute beyond belief, and it serves a purpose, especially towards the end, when you really need to empathize with him when he's working. He's not just a joke character. Like, he's literally a baby. He's not, I would even go as far as to say he's not the same Groot from the first movie. And I thought that everything about how they handled that character was great. As I mentioned earlier, one of the strengths of this film is that they took the relationships that they had established earlier in the first movie and kind of pushed them forward. You know, to open up the movie, you have Quill and Rocket going separate ways because of some plot details of some things that happened to them. And it really, I think, hits pretty hard when those two are separated, because the opening of the movie is them squabbling and fighting back and forth with each other, and Quill throwing some pretty hurtful insults at Rocket about, like, the people who made him and how that they didn't care about him, and really, like, digging into his past. I think not necessarily meaning to hurt Rocket, just kind of hitting back when he gets hit with argument, and yet it feels like that he's done something to hurt Rocket and to drive Rocket away. And so separating those two out, it feels like these two people have had this fight, and now that they're apart from each other, that they're not really good friends anymore, but they're still family. And there's this underlying theme of family here that's so important, because there's the Fast and Furious kind of Disney-esque idea of family. It's like, we're always together and everything's great, and yeah, we stick up for each other. But Guardians of the Galaxy delves into the idea that family is messy a lot of times. There's also the plot element of Peter and his dad. You know, Star-Lord has been without a father figure this whole time. For him to finally meet his father in this, as if you've seen the trailers, you know Kurt Russell pops up and is his dad. And the way that plays out, because Peter opens up to, I think, Gamora about his vulnerabilities of, like, I as a kid, I had to make up a dad. You know, of course it's a joke because it's Guardians of the Galaxy, and he talks about how he carried around a picture of David Hasselhoff. But there's this very real emotional stakes here for this kid who grew up without a dad, and now he's meeting a father figure who's everything that he wanted him to be, and they're playing catch like he always wanted to, and him processing, what this family is versus the family that he has. It works so well as the story unfolds and makes the story beats hit even harder as the movie progresses. Quill and Gamora still trying to figure out how they feel about each other. That's not as big of a plot element, I felt. I mean, they handled it well. Their chemistry was still good, I thought, but it wasn't like centerpiece of the film. It continues to be a good sort of on-again, off-again relationship. She kind of likes him, but she got some issues, right? She's got bad daddy issues. Literally a bad daddy. Her daddy's gonna come and try to destroy the universe next year. And so she's been raised in very inhospitable environments. So you can understand where maybe it would be difficult for her to commit emotionally to someone. Speaking of her raising, Nebula comes back, and the relationship between Gamora and Nebula here is so powerful because Nebula finally gets to tell her side of the story and talk about what it meant to be raised by Thanos and being forced to fight each other constantly and be at each other's throat because of their dad. And again, family comes back in, and dysfunctional family. And how do you put back together the pieces once your family has fallen apart like that? When you have such a huge rift, can you make it work? And I loved how the movie explored that. Drax digs up some old wounds and talks about what his past was like and really has some great moments. He plays off Mantis a lot in this film, which I think really works. He gets to sort of explain himself to her because she doesn't, she's a new character. And then, it's Rocket and Yondu, and these two guys who end up kind of being two sides of the same coin, meeting up with each other and discovering what it is that they were missing out of their lives. And Yondu's inclusion here as a person looking for redemption is probably, I would say, the best character in this movie. And he gets the most satisfying moments and the most real moments. I just loved so much about this film. I'm trying to think of like, man, I wish they'd done something different, and I can't. I feel like they hit that balance perfect. The arc of the whole thing being about family, again, because your first act is, Peter meeting his father and leaving to go to his father's planet and finding out, about his father and learning about him, and how all of that plays out ties in so perfectly with everything that all of these characters learn separately, and you bring these threads together in the end, and it's got so much heart and so many laughs. I mean, really, the laughs here, I laughed at this movie more than, I don't know. I don't remember the last time I laughed this much. It was very funny, but to me, not overpoweringly funny, because I would be laughing, and at the same moment, there would be an undercurrent of like, oh man, like, there's like something actually poignant being said here. Drax calling Mantis ugly and trying to make this connection with her is so him, right? It's funny because he doesn't know how to interact with people, but it's also heartbreaking because he's lost everybody that he ever loved and everybody he did know how to interact with. And the movie's full of that stuff. And on top of that, in my opinion, we've got a great Marvel villain in this film. Not because of what this person's motivations are, because it's a very sort of stock kind of supervillain motivation, but the connection that this person has to the team really makes what they do super important and poignant to the story. It's not just a random... I mean, in the first movie, Ronan the Accuser, is just this guy who doesn't like people for some reason and nobody really knows him. I think that Gamora kind of has some history with him, but really they're like, he doesn't feel baked into the plot. He's just sort of a random external force that they have to go and fight off. And there's these random MacGuffins that they have to go and get. And in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the final battle has stakes. I mean, there are moments that hit and hit hard and you feel like, oh man, like this matters to the characters, not just to the universe. And that's important. It's important to have these moments that matter on an emotional character level more than they matter on a, oh no, the Dairy Queen's gonna get destroyed, guys. Watch out, the Dairy Queen. So for me, having that emotional resonance makes the villain in this movie one of the best villains we've seen in the MCU. I mean, not since Loki and Thor going at it like brothers and their whole history together have we had a villain that really mattered this much on an emotional level to the heroes, and I love that. I love that dearly. I know there are other people who didn't absolutely love this movie, who thought it was a step down from the first, and maybe they have some valid points. But for me, for my personal experience, this is not only one of my top 5 Marvel movies, but I think definitely my favorite movie I've seen this year. I'm trying to think of a movie that I enjoyed more than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, that hit me harder than Guardians of the Galaxy 2. It worked on so many levels, and I can't help but gush about it. Anyway, that's what I thought. I'd love to hear what you guys thought, especially if you didn't like it, because I know that I am definitely in something of a minority in just gushing about this film. I don't think anybody really hated it, but I think in general there's this sense that it's a step down, and if you disagreed with some of the stuff that I've said, I'd really like to hear what your thoughts are, what your rationale is, where you were at. Maybe I was just in a great emotional place and had a really great crowd, and I did. The theater crowd was great, and I felt good watching the film. Sometimes you're going into something and you're tired and you're not really primed to receive it, but I was just ready for this on every level. There was so little about it that was disappointing to me. So tell me why I'm wrong, or if I'm not, tell me why you love the film too. And until next week, for the Human Echoes Rundown, I'm Albert Berg. Take care, everybody.